I've always loved the words of the old African spiritual. I told Jesus it would be all right if he changed my name. Jesus told me that the world would turn against me if he changed my name. But I told Jesus it would be all right if he changed my name. Many of you were here in the sanctuary when Callie Day sang this haunting song as a part of her exceptional set. Since then, I've learned the 5-time Grammy Award-winning artist and civil rights hero, Roberta Flack, who was born in the mountains of North Carolina, reimagined this spiritual in 1969 on her #1 platinum album, First Take, which has now become one of the most famous versions of this song ever recorded. And somehow Roberta found a way to make this spiritual more haunting and more melodic at the same time. But what truly impressed me most about her version is that she added a few verses that were not in the original spiritual. Jesus told me your father, your mother, your brother, and your baby sister won't know you if I change your name. But I told Jesus it would be all right if he changed my name. Roberta rightly understood that this spiritual, which is a metaphor for baptism and conversion, could also be interpreted as a song about conviction and the cost of following one's conscience in a world set against you or a family that disowned you. Just as she had reimagined the song, The Ballad of the Sad Young Men, as an ode to the Stonewall generation and the fight for LGBTQ+ rights, so too Roberta's version of I Told Jesus can be sung as a manifesto for people coming out of the closet, especially for our transgender and non-binary siblings, as many of them will literally make the decision to change their names, which often causes the world and sometimes even their families to turn against them or to disown them. Naming ceremonies were incredibly common in ancient tribal communities and in indigenous cultures. Today, they remain important. Unlike Western culture, where a person has basically the same given name for their entire lives, in indigenous traditions, a person might have 2 or 3 names during their lifetime: a given name at birth, a descriptive name at the beginning of adulthood, and a spirit name when they become an elder. We frequently find naming ceremonies throughout the Bible which seem to function as a rite of passage. Abraham, Sarah, Joshua, Solomon, Naomi, Peter, and Paul, and many others had their names changed at significant or transformative moments in their spiritual journey. This is not only a Judeo-Christian phenomenon either, as some of the most famous examples in the 21st century occurred when public figures changed their names upon converting to Islam, like Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, Yusuf Islam, or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. One of the most powerful stories about a name change is the story of Jacob. You may remember how Jacob stole the birthright of his brother Esau, his older brother, which tore his family apart and caused a deep rift between him and his brother. Our story takes place many decades later, after Jacob has built a large family with many herds of cattle and has just learned that his estranged brother Esau is coming to meet him with 400 men, news which terrified Jacob. And so he prayed that God would deliver him from the hand of his brother Esau because, and I quote, "I am afraid of him," he said. "He may come and kill us all, the mothers with the children." So Jacob created a plan to appease his brother by giving him 200 goats and hundreds of rams and 60 or so camels and another 40 or 50 or so cows. But he was still so scared after creating that plan that in the middle of the night before, he took his wives and his children and everything he had, and he sent it across the river ahead of him and spent the night at the camp by himself in hiding. Jacob was filled with fear and distress because he believed that Esau was going to mount a surprise attack in the middle of the night and ambush and kill him and his entire family. And Jacob was right to be worried because he would be ambushed, but not by Esau, but by the living God. There is no other story in the Bible where God physically wrestles with a human being, which is why many scholars have argued that this was not God at all, but an angel or Satan or his brother Esau in disguise. Others claim that Jacob was wrestling with himself or his own shadow, like the famous psychoanalyst Carl Jung claimed. All of these readings are possible because the writer of Genesis does not tell us who this figure is that comes in the night. It remains a mystery. They're simply called a man, a representative for God that ambushed Jacob and wrestled with him throughout the night. And as if this story was not already extraordinary, we are told that Jacob recovered from the ambush of this strange attacker and fought so well that he would not allow them to prevail over him. They were equally matched and found themselves at a draw, a tie, a stalemate. An epic clash of the titans was taking place at the ford of the Jabbok River. And as the sun was rising and God's mysterious man realized that he would not beat Jacob that night, he struck a violent blow on his hip, knocking it out of socket, and begged Jacob to let him go. But Jacob said, "I will not let go unless you bless me." And so the man said, "You shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and humanity and have prevailed." And then, just as mysteriously as the man came, they disappeared. So Jacob called that place Peniel, saying, "For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved." And then the writer falls into a kind of poetry, saying, "And the sun rose up upon him as he walked away limping because of his hip." Jacob survived the ambush and the wrestling match, winning a blessing and a new name from God, but he was left injured, forever marked by the encounter and interminably changed by the struggle. In fact, his new name, Israel, would be a constant reminder of this moment forever, as it means the one who struggles with God and humanity. The great scholar of the Hebrew Bible, Gerhard von Rad, once wrote, "In this story, Israel has presented its entire history with God prophetically as a struggle until the breaking of the day." Jacob's new name, Israel, would represent not only his strength and his capacity for struggle, but also his ability to struggle well. It stands as a continual reminder of the battle that he had to endure to make amends with his brother. First, before he could do that, he had to come to terms with himself, to come to terms with his own identity, to become ready to reconcile with Esau and with the rest of the world. We all know it's the journey that matters, not the destination. And the same is true of the struggle. It is not winning that matters, but how we struggle. Like Jacob, we are all called to struggle well. As a white, cisgendered, heterosexual male, I stand in awe of the struggle that our LGBTQ+ siblings have faced and continue to face every day, especially our transgender and non-binary friends. It is a struggle I will never personally experience, but one I have the most profound respect for and will not abandon. On this Pride Sunday, as we celebrate the beautiful diversity of God's creation as a church, we also proclaim that people of all sexual orientations and gender identities are beloved children of God who must be welcomed and affirmed and included and fully embraced as a part of the family of God. We lament and repent for the ways that Christians and other religious groups have harmed and continue to harm LGBTQ+ people. And whether we are part of that community ourselves or not, we commit once more to join in solidarity with their struggle for rights and for liberation. The struggle continues today as the ACLU and the Human Rights Campaign have been tracking 683 anti-trans bills in 2024 alone, which is more than any other year on record, making this the 5th consecutive record-breaking year for the total number of anti-trans bills considered in the United States. 45 of those bills passed. Another 127 are still active and being considered as the targeting of trans people increasingly moves to the national stage. Trans people are being targeted in education, in sports, in healthcare, in civil rights, in bathrooms, in employment, in incarceration, birth certificates, marriage, the military, and more, and on and on. There are 7 bills being considered in North Carolina and another 36 in South Carolina. All of this is negatively contributing to the rate of mental health crisis, suicide, and death among trans and non-binary youth. But it is not just a struggle for the rights of trans and non-binary people. If Roe could fall after 49 years, there is no reason to think that Obergefell, which secured the right of same-sex marriage, is any safer with our supremely unjust court. The struggle continues. And while it may not be our fault, it is our responsibility to continue to struggle. Israel's struggle did not end at sunrise on the ford of the Jabbok River. Students of the Bible will tell you, if they are careful to notice, that even after Israel reconciled with his brother, no one ever called him by his new name. For the remainder of the book of Genesis, for the remainder of the rest of Israel's life, everyone called him Jacob, even though God had given him a new name. Israel knew his name had been changed and that he'd experienced a profound transformation of personality and identity, but no one else seemed to know what happened, or worse, if they did know, no one cared to acknowledge it. Israel had to live the rest of his life knowing who he truly was, while the rest of the world did not truly see him. Israel's experience is a lot like transgender and non-binary individuals today who have transitioned and chosen a new name and pronouns for themselves, but their friends and family and school and church and community refuse to accept who they are by calling them by their new name or their true pronouns. Many describe the intense pain and trauma that occurs when loved ones continue to dead name them or misgender them with the wrong pronouns. I know that it's difficult to mentally shift the way that we've used the English language our entire lives, right? Some of you are still having a hard time right now following me using the name Israel instead of Jacob, and that's in the Bible. We're not going to get it right all the time. We're going to make mistakes. But shouldn't we still try? Don't we all just want to be called by our true name? Don't we all just want to be seen as our true selves? Don't we all just want to be known as we truly are? It is the core of our humanity. Trans and non-binary people face countless obstacles to accessing employment and housing, healthcare, just living on a day-to-day basis. It can be even more dangerous if you are a trans woman of color. So the act of choosing a name for themselves is one of the most powerful acts of autonomy and liberation. It is an incredibly important watershed moment, claiming their identity in the struggle for resurrection. And if we aren't willing to at least try to honor that, then we simply don't care. And we probably have no business calling ourselves an ally. Mark and Bridget Todd knew that their child, Buddy, was struggling when he was a toddler. Buddy was in Cub Scouts and baseball and basketball, but always wanted to wear dresses and long hair and paint his nails. Mark and Bridget let Buddy wear dresses at home, but they were afraid that he would be teased, so they would not allow it outside. They lived in this tension for years, and as Buddy entered elementary school, things got more complicated. Bridget found an entry in Buddy's diary where he said that if he could be anything else in the world, he would be a girl. Buddy began exhibiting behaviors and problems and severe temper tantrums, and Mark and Bridget, who are special education experts, could not get him through They thought that he might be gay, but it had never occurred to them, these educators, that he might be transgender. All their reservations about helping Buddy explore his identity came to a halt at one pivotal moment after he'd had another breakdown. Bridget said to Buddy, "I don't like to see you this sad. It breaks Mommy's heart. What can I do?" And Buddy responded, "Some days I wish that I could die so that God could bring me back a girl." That moment, Mark and Bridget knew they needed to pursue serious counseling to help Buddy. And they began to realize that what he was experiencing was gender dysphoria, the deeply held belief that one was born the wrong gender. Medical professionals shared that children can understand this about themselves as early as 3 or 4 years old. And that was when Buddy began a journey of becoming Lily. Bridget said, "Mark and I believe that Lily didn't decide to be a girl. She always was a girl." And though they were unfamiliar with this journey, Bridget says, "We knew something was going to have to happen. Something was going to have to change in order for Lily to be happy." And while Mark and Bridget have been supportive and not held on to the person that Lily was, it has not been without an internal struggle for them. Bridget says, "I never struggled with wanting to do the right thing. What I struggled with was grieving the loss of the son that I had. I gave birth to a boy. He wore his little denim clothes and his baseball cap. And when I look at the photo of him from back ago, that's Buddy I see in those photos. And I miss that little boy. But then I look at Lily," she said, "and I think, never mind. This is so much better." Bridget and Mark had to let go of what once was in order to allow Lily to be resurrected, to become a new creation, and to live fully as God had intended her to be. With the loving support of her parents, Lily started the first day of 3rd grade as a girl. And she was worried about how her peers would receive her. And when a group of curious girls came up at recess asking questions, Bridget, who was there with her, said, "This is the same person you knew last year, that you played foursquare with, that you jumped rope with, that you ran around with and played ball with. This is the exact same person, only now Buddy wants to be like you, a girl. Do you think you can let Lily be herself and do this?" The girls nodded in agreement, as only children can. They took Lily's hand and they ran off to play. And Bridget says, "I stood there with tears in my eyes, trusting that the rest of the day would be okay and that I could let her go and that all would be well." That was the moment she was completely free, and we never turned back. Lily needed her parents and friends to let Buddy die so that she could be reborn as Lily, so that she could be resurrected, so that she could truly live the life that God intended for her. It was a struggle for everyone in the family, but in the struggle, there is formation and growth and joy. As Frederick Douglass wrote, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Nothing good in life comes without struggle." Jacob was already struggling when he arrived at the ford of the Jabbok River. He was already in crisis about seeing his brother again for the first time since he stole something precious from him. He was already struggling with an existential crisis about who he really was. Jacob was trying to figure out how to apologize, how to ask for forgiveness, how to seek reconciliation with his brother, how to move forward. But he was terrified that Esau might kill him and the entire family and take back what was rightfully his. And then a miracle. God showed up at the most terrified moment of Jacob's struggle, during his dark night of the soul, and wrestled with him until daybreak. And that's the good news of this story. The good news is that God enters into the very depths of struggle with us and grabs a hold of us, just as he grabbed a hold of Jacob, and binds God's self to us in the midst of the struggles. And just as God helped Jacob to prepare for his encounter with his brother Esau, aiming him with a new name and blessing him with a new identity, God will do the same for us if we are willing to embrace the struggle and strive to struggle well. For all of our LGBTQ siblings who celebrate Pride this weekend, we bless you with the blessing of a God who enters into our struggles and wrestles with us. Like Jacob, you have struggled with humanity and God and prevailed. You are still here. You are still kicking. You are still alive. As Lucille Clifton wrote, every day something has tried to kill you and failed. And because you have prevailed in your struggle with humanity and with God, there is now no obstacle, no foe, no bill, no law, no politician, no religious leader, no think tank, no state, no nation that you cannot face, no matter how hateful or hostile or death-dealing. Because God, the wrestler, will be at your side. You may be marked, you may be wounded, you may be changed by your struggle, but those scars are the reminder of what you've overcome. Amen? Those scars are the symbols of the God who has ultimately been for you and with you and for your life and next to you in the struggle. And if God is for you, who can be against you? The struggle continues. And those of us who identify as allies and accomplices to our LGBTQ+ friends, we must struggle. We must each find our own unique way into the struggle through solidarity, so that it may be said of us as well, for you too have struggled with humanity and with God and prevailed. We too must find a way to sing their song of liberation with as great a passion and vigilance as if it is our own song, and to sing it until that day when there is no more struggle. And all of us who have been waiting for resurrection can raise our voices in harmony together in one chorus. I told Jesus it would be all right if he changed my name. Jesus told me that the world would turn against me if he changed my name. But I told Jesus it would be all right if he changed my name. Amen.